you're in a connected, bonded relationship because you can joke around and have fun.
You can.
And I don't
can.
know why he pushes the start button while we're in the middle of it. I think he wants to share with the world our crazy. That's what I think he wants.
Good morning. This is Couples Academy Live, and we are on with Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube.
Hey, everybody.
We have a topic for you today: resolving, or actually, it's power struggles in your marriage. Power struggles in your marriage. There's a lot of couples who are struggling because people want things their own way. People have their own agenda. People have their own perspective, and they come into a marriage and it becomes a huge struggle, and they can't seem to get any resolution. If you think about most divorces today, overwhelmingly, people are divorced. Why? Irreconcilable differences. They couldn't come together in agreement. And so we want to talk about that today.
And I think the question becomes, well, then who's right? Like, do you get to be right? Do I get to be right? How do we meet in the middle to get a solution to some major issues? And then what about this whole independence issue? Like, we're so independent individually before we come together. We had our own way of doing and thinking and acting and all of that. And then when we come together, we're forced to merge. But what if there's no middle? Is there a middle? That's what we want to talk about.
There's got to be a middle
today. Right.
Because if there's no middle and you are in two opposite ends of a spectrum, then you'll never be able to come together.
And nobody wants to completely die away. Like, nobody wants to disappear. Even though the Bible tells us we're supposed to die to ourselves on a regular basis, nobody wants to disappear and no longer recognize themselves because they have become the reflection of their spouse. So we want to talk to you about all the different ways that we struggle.
Yeah. So we wrote a book called The Audacity of Marriage, 10 Principles of Lifelong Partnership, Chapter 2, Resolving Conflict in Your Marriage. If you haven't gotten the book, go to Amazon right now, order the book. If you can see this, it's called The Audacity of Marriage, 10 Principles of Lifelong Partnership. And right on the first page of the second chapter, it says, many people have sat in our office and cried, screamed, and thrown things at each other and stormed out of the room for a multitude of reasons. And topics of disagreement have often been child rearing, nutrition, dress code, choice of friends, entertainment, drugs and alcohol, household responsibilities, of course, sex, financial decisions, in-laws, work schedules, life decisions, extracurricular activities. And there's really no limit to the number of challenges, problems, and conflicts that a couple can endure. And typically, these conflicts are birthed from two places. Number one, difference of perspective, and number two, an unwillingness to make necessary adjustments. And that difference of perspective is huge because the reality is you are not your spouse and your spouse is not you.
Right.
You did not marry them because they're you.
Yeah.
Yet when you get married, you want them to be like you, think like you, respond like you, react like you, process like you, and they're not. Mm-hmm. And you've got to be able to celebrate the differences. Yeah. But the differences that oftentimes get in the way are what? Religion and faith.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about religion and faith because that is a major one. And I even know for myself, I mean, we came into our marriage with the same religion, but not necessarily the same denomination.
No.
So for me, coming into your world and the church that you were going to, I always felt out of sorts. Like, I didn't grow up shouting, running, screaming. I used to, the dance, the praise dance that you do in church. I used to call it the chicken dance because I didn't do the chicken dance.
I've never seen a chicken dance like that.
You know, the one, do, the organ goes, everybody knows except Danielle didn't know the chicken dance. And so I remember, like, what is up with this? And it was a learning curve for me because I went to a non-denominational church. It was a big mega church. I had a very fiery, Holy Ghost baptized Italian pastor who had mostly Black church. So it's not like I was, in some bubble as far as culture is concerned, but I did not have all the experiences. I remember going with Hassani to different churches and, we're together. I would walk on certain stages and one of the mothers, I didn't even know the mother term was a thing. One of the mothers would come and pull me down and say, no, you can't do that. Or I remember people throwing like lace doilies over my lap and things. I was so out of sorts and I didn't get that, but it didn't end up being a conflict for us. Like it was just a learning curve and I actually enjoyed the experience, but these kinds of things can be conflict.
It could be a conflict because it's something you're not used to. You're not comfortable. You're like, what in the world is going on? Is this a cult? Are these people weird? But
I never thought that.
You never thought that. But beyond that, beyond the way service functions and operates, it's the belief system that you get from your religion or your faith. Even if you're both Christians or both Muslims or both Jews or whatever the case may be, to her point, different denominations, different interpretations, different perspectives, and really faith and religion shape how you do life. It shapes how you raise your children. It shapes everything. Every facet of your life is shaped by faith. And so oftentimes we see when two people come together with different faith or religious backgrounds, it can be a big issue, and it can create a power struggle in that relationship.
And some people have even converted. Like we know folks who have, you know, one Christian, one Muslim, and somebody's converting to Islam. And like these things, people do a lot of things to accommodate. But if you have no way of meeting in the middle and making it work, you will be in a lot of conflict.
Oh yeah. Let me just recognize some of the people on Instagram. My brother Jeff Simple, good to see you, brother.
Hey, Jeff.
Taylor, Mo Fendi, Latach.Mammon. Okay, and then on here we have, who do we have? We have Ms. Dre to you. Okay, April, good morning.
Hi, April.
Army Princess, I love your channel. We love that you love it. Boom. Joshua, wow, deep stuff.
Joshua.
Tanya, good morning, Tanya. Good morning, Tanya. Good to see you. Karen left out. So we're talking about the differences in terms of perspective. So we talked about faith, but another big one is culture. Now, when I say culture, I don't necessarily mean race, like black, white, Latino, Arab. Those are different. I guess you can call them races or whatever. But oftentimes it's the culture within the couple that causes a problem.
Yes.
Because you can have a Haitian and a Jamaican, two different cultures. It presents a problem. You can have North Korean, South Korean, two different cultures, solves a problem. But we have different family cultures.
That's it.
You see?
That's always going to be the case. I don't care what your culture, your race is. You're always going to have different family cultures that take place. And I think about, for me being coming from a broke family, struggling single parent household, I mean, we shared everything. Like I'm telling you, if there was a slice of bread, everybody would get a corner.
Good
right?
Y'all were starving.
We weren't starving.
They were starving.
But my point is,
they were hungry.
Is that we learned, like even within my brothers, we learned to share. There was always enough if there was some. And I remember with us, we didn't have that same thing. Like Hassani would see a piece of bread and it's like, there's only one piece of bread left, so I ate it. I'm like, and I'm not saying that I'm making it an example. I'm making an example. Like we had those, that was a big major thing for us because I always thought share, and if one person gets something, everybody gets something. Hassan, you didn't think that way.
I didn't think
that way. No, you thought what? Well, why? Why because one person's getting something, does everybody have to get something? Yeah. Why? Because I buy this person something, does everybody have to get something? So it was a different way of thinking. My thinking is like, because it's fair, everybody has to get something if one person gets something. But you can see how that would be a conflict.
And here's the deal. In the grand scheme of things, does that even matter? It really doesn't. A lot of times we don't fight over these big rocks or big boulders. It's the tiny little pebbles. It's the tiny little annoying, frustrating pebble in your shoe that creates the problem.
And if it matters, it matters. Like even if it's a little small vine, right? If it's the small foxes or whatever, that still can become a big problem in your marriage, even though it's a little thing, because you just aren't seeing eye to eye.
Yeah. So we're talking about faith. We're talking about culture. Another big issue, obviously, as you know, gender. There are major gender differences. Men are different than women. Women are different than men. And in addition to just the physical differences, there's emotional, psychological, chemical differences in us that make us unique to who we are. And oftentimes it causes us to misunderstand, misinterpret who our spouse actually is. And we talk about how we oftentimes want to fix our spouse, train our spouse, make them just like us. So we want our wives to be more masculine in the way that we think. Wives oftentimes want men to be more feminine in the way that they think, not how they act, but in terms of how they process. And that causes the problem, because when you say that, you're ultimately saying God made a mistake. He didn't know what he was doing. And I'm going to take the lead and fix this man or fix this woman to be what I need them to be. But here's the deal. If you try to make your spouse just like you, then one of you has just become obsolete. There's no need for the other because you got two of the same. So you've got to be able to recognize those differences.
Yeah, I think we go into relationships a lot ignoring problems or back burnering the problem because I'm like, yeah, I'll fix that later. Like, we'll work on that later. Maybe that's the beginning of the problem, because if you know it was an issue and you overlooked it thinking later on, I'll shift some things or I'll teach him, I'll show him, and that doesn't happen, then you're going to have some problems.
Yeah, absolutely. Next, we have past experiences. So we all have unique experiences that shape the way we think and help us to interpret things in a particular way. And we think, well, if it worked then, it's got to work now. And what I did then has got to be relevant now. Well, guess what? Our differences of perspective and experiences and upbringings and the way that we were trained and shaped and cultivated in our homes will always create a divide. So in essence, you have two cultures coming together now competing with one another. And so you have to learn how to begin to negotiate through some things to get on the same page. But couples don't do that, so they remain in conflict.
Yeah,
all right, I think we got some
of these comments and see what people are saying. Karen Gibson says, my husband's family culture has been to make fun of each other, but my family did not. It has been a problem for us. That's a big one. That's a big one, because if I bet your husband thinks that you just take things way too seriously. I remember one time when we were joking, because Hassani and I joke a lot. I'm probably the more of the jokester than he, but he needs that. He really needs that from me. But anyway, I remember one time we were like with some friends and we were just cracking on each other and joking back and forth. And the couple in the front was just like, y'all shouldn't do that. And they began to school us.
I remember that.
Do you remember on why we shouldn't do that? We were just like,
we used to like, we
were like, what sticks up the butts?
We started out as friends.
Right.
And it developed into a relationship. And so we had a connection that a lot of people don't have.
Yes. However, because we were doing what you were talking about. Later on, we actually made the adjustment. Remember, because we were like, we shouldn't talk to each other like this. We shouldn't call each other these names. So I think that that's a really powerful point.
See the pivot? We made a pivot.
Yeah, we really did.
And it's important that as a couple, you really take the time to make pivots and shifts and changes. And what worked in one season of your marriage may not work in another. As we matured and as we realized what was important for us, we made those changes.
And I think it's important to know that in the confines of your family dynamic, you're going to have different relationships with different people. And so I think that, like, I don't have the same relationship I have with my oldest daughter, Paris, that I have with my youngest daughter, Sydney, or with Hassani. We all have different relationships. Like, me and Paris joke and can crack up at stuff. And then I don't have maybe the same relationship with Hassani, where he doesn't find certain things funny that I might joke with my 16-year-old, right? So I think it makes sense to have these conversations with your spouse to say, hey, listen, like, I can't get with the joking and the cracking on me like that. That hurts my feelings. You can't crack on me like that. You can't joke with me like that, and make sure that those boundaries are set to protect your heart and your emotions.
That's right. And
that's a good one.
And all these things serve to create conflict. And conflict is nothing more than two opposing thoughts or beliefs operating in the same place at the same time, and there's no resolution. And when you remain in conflict, life gets hard. Life gets challenging, and the relationship just becomes, oh my God, it feels like an eternity. Where you can't get through these particular issues. So we talked about.
I see Jeff over there. He's saying, "Love you guys. I'm heading over to Amazon. Can you buy me something?"
Yeah, I can give you my address offline. But we're talking about what creates power struggles and how to overcome them in your marriage. So there's a difference of opinion, right? But there's also the unwillingness to make the necessary adjustments. So we find that a lot of couples are stuck. They are unmovable. They are stubborn. They won't budge, and they have to be right. And that creates a space in your marriage where, guess what? Here's a term you've heard 1,000 times. Well, we're just going to agree to disagree. How many times have you said, oh, we just agree to disagree? Now, it doesn't mean you have to agree on everything.
Right.
You don't have to have the same way of thinking. It doesn't mean that. But there's a power in agreement. And there's a way that you can have two different perspectives and come together in agreement to form a thought, a belief system, a way of doing things where you consider both people's perspective. But there's an art and science to it, and you got to learn that thing. And so These
I
are the
want to
things
say
that we're
hi
doing.
to Kendra. Hey, I haven't seen you in a while,
Kendra,
Kendra.
good to see you,
to
sis.
see you. Hey, Kathy.
Hey, Taylor.
We're gonna put some names up here just to acknowledge everybody.
She said that's my husband. Yeah, Rayla, that's my husband. Yeah, I get it.
Hey, Kathy. Listen, guys, we really appreciate you guys showing up and tuning in every week. So just make sure that you're sharing this with everybody. Let folks know so that they can be a part of all of this. So go ahead, Hubs.
Yeah, so independent thinking at the end of the day is one of the biggest ways that couples remain in a power struggle.
So I think, when it comes to independent thinking, I can hear the voices of the people saying, well, like, I am independent. Like, do I need to to think like my husband? I have different tastes. I have different styles. I want different things. I think about like decorating, something as simple as decorating your home. And if you're married to somebody who likes earth tones, but you like pastels, conflict, right? So how do we meet in the middle and make sure every need is met? Or is it that we shouldn't be expecting? Well, maybe we shouldn't always expect to have our own way all the time.
Here's the thing. I think you need to recognize the uniqueness of your spouse. There's a reason why you chose them. There's things about them that bring significant value to your life and to your home. And so if you recognize each other's strengths and don't have to feel like you have to be in competition with your partner, and a lot of times that's where the power struggle is, right? We are in competition with our spouse, which is insane.
Truly.
Like, Joker, you don't have to compete with me.
Yeah. See, I'm on your team.
We're on the same side. We struggle with that. And we like, she would constantly remind Hazani, we're on the same side.
Yeah.
We're on the same team.
Right.
Because there were differences and I wanted things a particular
way.
And
I think a lot of times we're just not seeing the forest through the trees on a situation. Like, I don't think a lot of times we actually realize we're going for the same thing. We're fighting for the same thing. So you're fighting me about the words that I'm saying, how I'm saying it, and you're not hearing me. And so we're fighting about what the thing that we both want. And I think that becomes the challenge, is actually hearing the heart of the matter so that we're not always in conflict. Sometimes we can get so caught up in our head about our point of view, we haven't even heard. I'm agreeing with you. Yes, we're on the same side.
I think we've married our spouses, but we're still married to our own methods.
Yeah.
And that oftentimes gets in the way. And you got to be willing to divorce yourself from methods sometimes.
Yes.
All right. My husband family culture address things in open. And if you do something wrong, they disagree. They will confront you out. They will confront you out. My family's view is to be more respectful and to address it in private. Okay.
They will express it out in front of everybody. And that is definitely like different family cultures, because, I think about in the church zone, right? There is a philosophy and an idea that when there's a sin or a problem, you air that. It is a public thing. You need to go to the elders. You need to tell everybody. Everybody needs to know your slip up. If there's an infidelity, if there's any shortcoming, everybody needs to know, especially in some of the smaller cultural churches. But that might not be your MO. Like, we didn't have the MO in my family. We didn't tell our business to nobody. Like, it was a whole secret, like what we were going through. So if you're in a marriage where you have those two conflicting ideas, again, it's about having these conversations to establish rules so that everybody feels respected.
Absolutely.
Let's look at Kira. She had a comment. Yes, Danielle, stop comparing different relationships. We will not have the same relationship as a friendship where no offense has taken place. That's so true.
That's
right.
Very true.
When you're married, they have a way of hitting you in places that you didn't even know existed, and no friendship or child can hit you at the source like your spouse can.
And so as we wrap this up today, and we're going to do a part 2 tomorrow, the reality is, I think we need to understand the Bible says that a man shall leave his father and mother, cleave unto his wife, and the two shall become one.
Yeah.
So it goes back to the power of oneness. And you've heard us talk about this before, but oneness is not sameness. God doesn't want us to be the same. He wants us to be one. God wants unity, not uniformity.
Yeah.
So we don't need to look exactly alike, but we have to have unity. Now, unity, why would there be unity? Because there are obviously differences. And so when you take the time to recognize and to celebrate and to figure out how these differences can work in a relationship, you're no longer in a power struggle, but you're tapping more into the power of agreement. And we're going to talk about that tomorrow, the power of agreement. So how do you overcome power struggles? in your marriage by embracing the power of
Ooh,
agreement.
wait till you hear how powerful the power of agreement is.
And it's a power that's more powerful than the power of struggle.
Yes. Oh yeah. There's weakness in the power of struggle.
Weak.
There's no foundation in the power of struggle. Literally, you collapse under your own feet when you're struggling. But when there's a strong foundation and agreement,
yes,
wow, the power that's in that. But I wanted to just mention, somebody had asked, how can they get a FaceTime session with us? It's easy. We offer a 15-minute discovery session. You could go on couplesacademy.org and schedule yours absolutely free. We'll see you and we'll accept it, and we will be talking very soon. I want to say hey to a few people. Cherise, hey, I see you in there, and all the other people that
Mr. Know Your Work.
Yeah, all those people up there in Instagram. We want to figure out a way to bring you into the other conversation. But for now, we thank you for joining. Make sure that
Wesley,
you share. Hey, Wes, how are you? All right, guys, I think we're wrapping up for today. Hassan, got to jump on a call immediately. But please tune in for part 2 tomorrow, because we're not going to just drop these problems on you. We're going to give you powerful solutions. So we'll see you tomorrow.
All right, guys. Love you. Talk to you soon.